What's your perspective on Eric Adams, our mayor? Putting aside the fact that he seems to be under investigation at the moment himself,
Yeah.
but putting aside that, what I guess I'm most interested in, unless there's any other thoughts that you have, his election was very much focused on the idea that we were having this crime wave, and crime did go up significantly during COVID. It has also begun to drop significantly in the wake of sort of like more normalization. But what of and Adams made it like it was made it such a big deal that people in upstate New York were talking about like there's this crazy crime epidemic that's coming, and of course it never reached what it was when you were a kid in New York City. But what of the exploitation of crime as a political issue, and what does that do both to the cops and to the opportunity for reform?
Yeah. I mean, listen, the crime did rise during the pandemic, and it's a reality. There are different reasons as to why, but it's real. It's something that happened. While campaigning, the current mayor, he used that as part of his platform, especially because of his background as law enforcement, as to why he's the guy that has to lead the city out of the situation. The irony is that within a few months of his administration, he actually attacked media for reporting crime, right? Saying they're painting New York City in a particular light. It's like, this is the light that you used to say why you're the one folks should vote for. The mayor, I'm still very confused by the mayor, particularly because of his, not just his past as law enforcement, but specifically as an activist. This is something that a lot of people either don't know or have really forgotten about. Mayor Adams. He started out as Officer Eric Adams, and he was one of the founding members of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. And honestly, the cop activist, he was the first, in his capacity. I remember as a kid watching him, at lecterns and podiums, speaking truth to power against the Giuliani administration, and I was actually somewhat inspired by that. He's been a mentor in the past, when I became a whistleblower, but unfortunately, that's not who I'm seeing right now, and I'm not understanding why. The person that I thought he would be when it comes to these issues is not what I'm seeing reflected for some reason.
Interesting. I'm not. I don't know how much I was aware of that past, and I wonder how much that influenced
Yeah,
people's perspective on what he was going to do once he got into office.
yeah, he was
Um,
an activist. He was the original activist cop. It was actually amazing to watch. My dad didn't speak English well, so I had to translate the news into Haitian Creole for him, and that's when I first got my first glimpse of Eric Adams at about 11 years old, translating the news for my dad.
when you look back on this and like on this, I guess ultimately 15 years more or less as a cop and the suit, what I'm just curious is your overall perspective, like in terms of regrets or concerns or like what, like where does this leave you?
It's a good question. Well, in terms of the mission, in terms of the objective, there have been victories. There's a lot more, because it's been incremental. So there's a lot more work that I want to do. In terms of regret, I don't regret it. There are things. This takes quite a toll on your personal life. I tell you that. So I'd probably make a few decisions differently there. But other than that, this is essential. This was needed. Think about it, Sam and Emma. During the pandemic, right, when we didn't even know if the world was going to continue, the one thing that remained constant was police brutality. Think about that. We don't even know. People are losing relatives, loved ones, friends at an alarming rate all around the world. No one knows what's about to happen. We're in an election year. But the one thing that was constant was Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. I mean, those are the folks that lost their lives. Imagine, but the police harassment continued here in New York. the police department were handing out masks in white areas. When the weather got warmer in May going into June, they were handing out masks. But in black areas, they were using social distancing as a reason for that initial stop that I spoke about. The fact that people were congregating closely or not wearing masks was being used to search their pockets. You know, that the fact that in the middle of a pandemic that we can still count on police brutality, this is something that we have to continue to work towards. So I will never regret taking these steps in that sense. I just have a lot more work to do.
Are there places around the country where you've seen any type of reforms that came out of in the wake of the George Floyd protests where you think there's been meaningful reform?
Well, one of the things that we saw was definitely an increase in having more diverse leadership. But what that translates to, again, I will never fall for cosmetic diversity. I don't care what you look like, how you identify. If you're in a leadership position, I need to see what you're doing, you know, what those experiences cause your policies to look like. So I'm still, that's something I can't answer yet. I'm still analyzing it myself, but I'll definitely get back to you if there's any particular police department that I feel is starting to evolve in the right direction, especially in the wake of George Floyd.
Let me ask you one more question in that account. Is it what that you know, around the idea of just like sort of the cosmetic representation as opposed to genuinely representing a different mode of thought? When people of color and black people, brown people become in a position of authority within the police department, is it that they've been acculturated a certain way, or is it just simply from your perspective that the incentive structure is the same way? So, you know, a human being, if they're told their career depends upon ringing this bell 10 times, they're going to do it, whether they have grown up in a system that has acculturated them to believe that they should bang that bell 10 times or not. I mean, if the incentive is when they're in the leader to bang it 10 times, that's what they're going to do. What do you, like, from your perspective, like what's going on with that?
Honestly, I'd say it's a combination. It starts off with what's incentivized, but then when you do it long enough and you don't challenge it, it becomes what you believe in. You know, it becomes what you think is essential, especially if you're not the type of person that really tries to problem solve yourself. You kind of accept, you accept the reality that's presented to you, and it's coming from authority. You're indoctrinated into this paramilitary structure, so you're not challenging what you're being fed, you know. And before you know it, you rise to leadership and you perpetuate it, and it goes on. So it's a combination of both of those things. Because I remember there was an officer who he had just completed his degree in criminal justice at John Jay College. At the time, I was enrolled in John Jay, and I was very surprised and delighted to see that John Jay, the curriculum was not afraid to push the envelope and talk about, you know, the reality behind modern policing. But this officer was actually under investigation for a video that just gone viral. And when I pulled him aside, I said, you know, if you've completed your degree at John Jay, which I'm getting ready to do, and you have this information that I'm now reading, why do you police the way that you do? And his answer was as simple as it was so profound. He says, because I want to make it to the detective squad. It's just about what's incentivized. So your morals, your ethic, your personal morals, ethics, your perspective, even your politics all get suppressed because of what's incentivized. And then fortunately it starts to shift your morals, your ethics, and your politics and your views. I know people who entered the police department liberal, and today they're the most conservative people I've ever met in my life. You know, yeah.